So Jesus asked the question at the altar pan, who do people say that I am? And I can see, this is the way I would shoot it. The disciples are like, oh, some say Elijah, some say this, some say that. And I can see Peter going, wait a minute. You know, the Lord's always asking rhetorical questions. He knows who we think he is. So why is he asking this? And if I was shooting this scene, I could see Peter standing looking this way. I'm Jesus, and the altar pans behind me. There's a technique called a rack focus, where I can see Peter looking at Jesus. Jesus is in focus, and all of a sudden Jesus goes out of focus, and pan comes into focus. And then Jesus comes back in focus, and he goes, oh, I get it. I see what you're doing here. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Yeah, that's right, Peter. Blessed are you, because nobody told you this, but my Father just gave you the revelation of what I'm doing here. It's not a coincidence that my destination is Jerusalem, guys. Why did I come all the way up to the top of Israel, go way out of the way to this one specific spot and ask you this question? Zeus ran supreme at that time. Jesus was about to topple Zeus's regime. He stops and asks the question, who do you say that I am? And he says, the gates of Hades, the brother of Zeus, is not going to prevail about what you just said, against what you just said. And I'm going to build my church, by the way, upon this. I think there's a lot to that statement. The revelation that I've been getting recently is that I think part of building the church on that rock is the revelation of what I just showed you. Jesus is going to do something pretty phenomenal, because when he went to the top of this mountain, Jesus went to the top right there. From that location, he could see the area where Zeus was created at the top. He could look down and see his brother Hades, the altar of Pan, and Nimrod, who was the first Antichrist, whose vision was to create a one world against God at the Tower of Babel. And Jesus said, okay, it's like the movie Rocky. If you remember the first movie, the very first thing you see is a picture of Jesus. Fade from black, there's Jesus. The camera pulls back from the painting, and you see Rocky. He's fighting this dude, right? He's a nobody. Rocky gets a chance to go up against Apollo Creed, the heavyweight champion of the world. The name is very peculiar because Apollo was a son of Zeus. Creed is the belief system of a people. So Rocky, the Rock, goes up against Apollo Creed. And before the big fight, if you remember the movie, he goes to the ring where the big fight's going to take place. He looks at this picture, this huge poster of Apollo Creed, you know, and he goes home and he says to Adrian, you know, I just want to go the distance with Creed. Nobody's ever gone the distance. Next day, he gets in the fight, goes 15 rounds with the world heavyweight champion, and is still standing. All he said is, I just want to be standing. And he was still standing. And then in Rocky II, the second coming, The Rock, gets married, and then he beats him. I'm going, man, I don't know if Sylvester Stallone knows what he's doing there, but that's a great analogy for what I think Jesus did. He went and surveyed the ring, right, where Zeus landed. He goes up there, and then Mickey and Polly show up to give him a pep talk. Moses and Elijah. And it says from that point on, he went preaching about his death, burial, and resurrection. And he headed from there all the way down to Jerusalem, where he went 15 rounds with the devil and was still standing when it was over. That's a pretty powerful revelation. Now, speaking of mountains, I don't know if you've ever seen this before. This is the Nazca Lines in Peru. If you can imagine the top of the Rocky Mountains sheared off, completely level, no debris anywhere, and what looks like runways and all kinds of weird pictograms are carved in the ground that can only be seen from above. This is thousands of years old, guys. It's really weird. It's really freaky, especially when you look at this little design right here. Why? Because about 9 months ago, it showed up in the skies of Norway when Obama went for his Nobel Peace Prize. Go ahead and Google the Norway spiral, and you're going to see some really weird stuff. This right here happened just a couple of weeks ago. It's a UFO that shut down an airport in China. This is another picture of the China UFO. Here's another one right here. This is like 3 weeks ago. There's another one in another Asian country, and another one that happened in Australia. This crop circle right here showed up in England about a month ago.
They said that was a rocket that went on.
Yeah, that's exactly what they said. Let's talk about that. The world is talking about disclosure. We want to know what's really going on. What are they saying? Oh, it's failed rockets. First of all, there's a big problem if rockets are failing like that over major cities all over the planet. That's a big problem, guys. But even if that's true, that's what rockets do when they fail. They don't make perfect spirals, pulsate for a long period of time, and do all kinds of weird stuff like the Norway spirals and all the other ones did. Meanwhile, the ancients are carving that thing. Ancient people were carving this over and over and over again in the caves and cliffs of rock. And alongside the spirals, there are people running for their lives. You know, you see little goats and little stick people like, ah, running away. You know, Jesus himself said there's going to be weird stuff up in the sky. But the church isn't talking about this stuff. Man, here's what I think is going on. Jesus says it was in the days of Noah. Roswell, New Mexico was the beginning of the modern UFO phenomenon. Aliens, grays, abduction. If you look at all that stuff, all it is repackaged Nephilim activity. All of it. Didn't actually land in Roswell. It landed supposedly just north of there, but it landed on the 33rd parallel. And if you take the location of where whatever landed and you multiply that location by the universal constant, which is pi, it gives you the longitude, 104. Is that a coincidence? Is that a weather balloon? I don't think so. The weather balloon excuse of the 50s has turned to rockets in the 2010, I think. So I start, whether you agree with that or not, this makes for fantastic science fiction. I happen to think it's true. So I started writing about it. I said, okay, the Bible, it doesn't go into great detail, but Enoch does. It says of the 200 that came of the 1/3 of the fallen angels, 200 of them. Of the 200, 20 of them are named. One of them is named as the worst of all of them, and his name was Azazel. Azazel is in Scripture. Where the Jews sacrifice a lamb for sins, they would lay their hands on a goat and send the scapegoat out to Azazel. Now, if all you read is Scripture, you have no idea who or what Azazel is. But the other books tell you who he is. He's the worst of the 20 fallen angels that were doing that, messing around with women in Genesis chapter 6. And the narrative in the Book of Enoch takes you out of the earth and up into heaven where the archangels are looking down. They're like, God, how long are you going to let this go on? And God says, okay, here's the deal. He says, Michael ought to do something, Gabriel, Uriel, and then to Raphael, he says, go and bind Azazel in chains and bury him in a place called Dudiel in the desert, where he shall be bound until the day of judgment, and ascribe all sin to Azazel. That's the reason Jews send the scapegoat out to him, because all sin was ascribed to Azazel. So I got to thinking, okay, if that's in Iraq, what would happen if our troops were poking around over there in 2003, we're looking for weapons of mass destruction and happened to come across the cave of Dudiel and inadvertently find Azazel. I figured, well, all hell would break loose. That'd be pretty freaky. And so that's what happens. I got these soldiers there, they find this, and then it's very X-Files lost this, something happens, and the character ends up getting zapped out of there and reappears 7 years later in another desert, thinking he's in Iraq, but really he's in Arizona. And the whole first episode is him trying to figure out, oh, okay, what just happened, you know? And so I'm looking on Google Earth for a location, just looking for a location in the desert, and I find this weird spot right here, which first of all looks like an eye. Second of all, it's a black hole in the middle of nowhere, 2 hours north of Tucson in the desert of Arizona. So I thought, well, that's intriguing, that's cool. And I marked it, and I wrote it into my script. That's where Zachariah Randall is my main character. That's where he shows up. A couple days later, I get an email from Delta Airlines saying, hey, Rob, you've been traveling around the world. You've got a lot of sky miles. You better use them by the end of 2009 or you're going to lose them. So I thought, I got 3 days of vacation time and a 3-day weekend coming up. I told Sheila, I think I'm going to go to Arizona and go check this stuff out. She's like, go, do it. So I did some location scouting. I'm going to tell you guys, I don't have time to tell you everything, but I literally spent 5 Abraham Moses type days in the desert with God alone, where he was just showing me crazy, cool, amazing stuff. Well, as I'm putting this presentation together, I was looking at all these numbers and stuff, and I look up this place, 33rd parallel. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So then I start looking over at my apartment. My apartment is on the 33rd parallel. I came down from Massachusetts on my 33rd birthday. My first job in Texas was working for a company called 33rd Parallel, and I built their website. I am telling you, there's been so much confirmation, it's just ridiculously crazy. And I'm like, what is the deal? And then I started asking the question, why is it that Jesus didn't do anything with his life that we're aware of until he was 30? He died at 33 after a 3-year ministry and was dead for 3 days. 33, 33. Jesus came to destroy the works of the devil in every sense of the word, right down to the numbers. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm going to depict in seed. And I think there's a reason why there's a harvest field right between Blockbuster Video and Cinemark. That's where I took the picture you saw earlier. There's a huge harvest field right between the video store and the movie theater, and I believe that's the perfect place to plant seed. Here's the trailer that I made for Seed. I didn't have any time or money to go get actors or anything to do it, so I made an animation of it. It's all animated, but it's meant just to illustrate the concept of Seed. And I just finished it, so you're one of the first to see it. My name is Zach Randall. Everyone thinks I'm dead, but I'm not. In December of 2002, my unit was sent to Iraq, looking for weapons of mass destruction. On the night of Christmas Eve, we found one.
Today, Azazel.
I don't know what happened to me that night, but my quest for answers begins here. You think the world might be a little bit intrigued? You can see that. It's got everything in it. Supernatural, biblical themes, arm growing back, all kinds of cool stuff.